What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of More to Marriage. I'm here with my amazing wife.
It's your girl, Crystal.
And your boy, Marquise. Listen, today, very important conversation we want to have with y'all. A conversation that was really birthed out of a season that we just found ourselves in, man. At the end of this last year, in 2023, the month of December, and I didn't know this until I was out of it. And I looked at Crystal once we finally got into 2024, and I said, I think I was depressed at the end of this last year. And I started to just think back to that previous season and the way that I didn't want to leave the house, the way that I was feeling about my self-image, the way that I was just, my outlook and my mental health was just suffering at the end of last year, man. And it started getting us in this conversation of, man, in marriage, and you know this to be true, you're gonna go through different seasons.
Yes.
No one season is created the same. And so what we wanna talk about today is when that season changes. And for us, it was a season of depression for me, which, how was that for you?
I mean, I was taken back because...
You was walking with me through it, though.
Yeah, I was walking, of course. I was walking with him, but when he was like just removed from family and friends and just different things, I really didn't know how to handle it. But I also wanted to give him his space, because when we don't have language about what is actually happening internally, it could affect any and everybody around us. So I just kind of gave him his space. So when we got back home and he was like, you know what, I think I was depressed, that was a light bulb in my mind of like, wow, that's where he was, and now I know how to come alongside him. Now I know how to encourage him so that he could get out of whatever funk that he is in.
And I really just tried to push through, and exactly how you said, I was just like, babe, I'm just in a funk, I don't know what it is. But when you really remove yourself and get outside to take a higher view, you realize, man, I actually had some internal things that I was battling with, and it really weighed on me as a husband, as a father. But here's what we know to be true, and here's what we sort of put in place to help us forge through that season. We realized that although the season had changed, our rhythm didn't change. My rhythm didn't change of just, okay, I just gotta get up, do the same routine, what we're normally doing. But here's the important thing we're gonna talk about today. When seasons change and rhythms don't, you become frustrated in your marriage.
Yes.
You become frustrated with yourself, maybe you become frustrated with your spouse. But when these seasons change, y'all, and they will change from having a job to being unemployed, so income changes, friends leaving, family members dying, whatever it might be, not all bad things, but good things as well. But when those seasons change, our rhythms have to change. And here's just 3 areas that rhythms had to change for us. Not an exhaustive list, but a list for sure, where our rhythms had to change. What do we mean by rhythms? Our rhythms of the quality of conversations had to change.
Yes, from like task-oriented conversations to soul-oriented. What do we mean by that? Task-oriented is like logistics. Who's picking up the kids, where we're going,
what's for dinner,
what we're gonna eat, all of those different things. We can find ourselves in a task-oriented conversations on a day-to-day basis, and that is not fully healthy for like a lasting marriage.
That's right.
And so we can't get stuck in that rhythm. The second is the soul-oriented conversations. How is your heart? Like, what's something that's in your heart that you may not have shared with me? What's a fear or what's a dream? Just being able to get to that space to connect on a more intimate level is really what our day-to-day should look like. If y'all tapped in with us at our last video, we talked about meeting on Sundays, our weekly meetings, and the type of conversations we have, and a lot of that is to help us to not get so stuck in the day-to-day with task-oriented conversations all the time. We want to live from that soul place so that we can help carry each other when we're in the valley seasons and on the mountaintops.
And we had to realize that. So when that season changed, we had to move from just task-oriented conversations and more soul-oriented conversations. So all January long, Crystal was like, hey, we identified that you were depressed, or maybe you still are depressed. Let's move from just logistics, I'll carry that, and let's talk about your soul. And so most of our conversations on the couch was, baby, talk to me. What are some motivations? What are some fears? How do you feel encouraged? How can I be here? When do you feel most seen? And that's what I thought was just wonderful. So
And can I also add, it's not always conversation. Sometimes it's just being there.
Yeah, the ministry of presence.
Soul-oriented conversations is not just with words, but it's also just with being. Can we be together? Can we read together?
That's right.
Can we just sit in each other's presence and be silent, and that's good enough? And so that was a special thing, so that we can both get and overcome whatever it is that we were challenged with or challenged by.
Absolutely. So rhythms with conversation need to be discussed.
Yes.
The second thing is date night rhythms need to be discussed. This looks different, y'all, in different seasons. So we got to talk about rhythms. I'll never forget when Crystal is 7-8 months pregnant, date nights looked different.
What you about to tell
When this girl, no, it just looked different.
Okay.
I'm gonna just say, for me, when I'm like, okay, date nights are usually an adventure, or we're out late, and now it's like, listen, brother, my feet hurt.
Right. Rub them.
Listen, brother, I need
Rub them.
Date night is you going to get in and out, bringing that back to the crib, and you rubbing my feet as we eat.
Right. And rubbing them for longer than 5 minutes.
Because I can listen, in my hand, I'll be like, listen, I cannot go on. And she'd be like, keep going.
For real.
But man, but date nights change, man. Whether it's someone's pregnant, whether, man, things have changed within y'all's world of, man, we're really tired. Work. So man, for us, we decided we got to reframe date nights from just being adventures, out, dinner and a movie, or whatever they might be, to what does it look like to have date night at home? Once we put the kids down.
Yes, and if it ain't on the calendar, it ain't happening,
It ain't
y'all.
happening.
It's just not
That's real.
happening. So you have to put your date night on the calendar, even if you're kicking it at home, right? If I'm having a movie night at home, date night is still on that calendar, and we're gonna put some little blankets down.
That's real.
You know, we're gonna turn the lights down, have some popcorn popping in the back, our little water or soda, and we're gonna enjoy ourselves in our living room. But that's still quality time that we're spending with one another.
And we have to reframe that, man. And maybe you're in a season where that needs to be reframed in your marriage. Don't be afraid to say, date night looked like this in this one season. This season, it looks like this. We got friends, man. Listen, Austin and Jazz, they are friends. They have a newborn.
Right.
Date night looks different, okay? You're not just taking that baby out. That baby get a fever. That baby get an earache.
That baby going on dates with them.
Yeah, date nights. Okay, we got our infant with us. But you got to talk about that. Because this is something that is a change in their relationship. So man, talk about that rhythm. So you got conversation rhythm, you got date night rhythms, and then last but not least, you have sexual intimacy rhythms. That changes in a different season. Whether that's somebody's, and I'll be honest with you, man, this is just real talk. For me, this depressed season back in December 2023 didn't feel like that.
Didn't want none.
I was just like, babe, and it wasn't like, because you feel like, man, I should want this, and I don't want Crystal to feel bad, but it's like, babe, here's where I'm at. Like, emotionally and mentally, I just can't show up for you the way that I want to in that area. So we talked about what that rhythm looked like. So Crystal was like, all right, well, you get a pass. Don't take it too long.
Or show up for yourself. Like, if you can't show up for yourself, what could he give me? So he had to figure out himself, figure out how to show up for himself so that I can get the best of him. And I think that is so important when we put language around it, so that we won't be at odds, so that we won't have unnecessary tension around these ideas, but especially sexual intimacy, because that's kind of like the glue to our marriage of how we stay connected and how we stay one with all the different chaotic things that can happen around us and in our world.
That's right. And so those seasons look different. And you know this. Sometimes there's high stress seasons. Maybe work is crazy, children, friendship. When you lost a loved one, things happen where that affects that sexual intimacy. But it's to say, don't neglect it, but let's schedule it. Don't neglect it,
but respect it.
Okay, okay, I can't with her, y'all. So let's keep moving on. Here's what this means, y'all. When we talk about these rhythms in marriage, here's why this is important. I recently read this in the scripture that I thought was brilliant in this whole idea of seasons changing. Proverbs 27:12 says, a prudent person or a wise person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simple-minded goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Are you or your spouse foreseeing the danger that's to come and making precautions, making arrangements, putting in a plan? Or are you seeing that danger and you just are going on? That's what the simple-minded person does. But for us, we want to say, okay, the season has changed, babe. If we don't change, there's some danger out ahead. Let's go ahead and change our rhythm. So Proverbs 27 reminds us to be intentional and not just be tossed to and fro by the winds of culture and the things that's taking place in our world.
Yes, y'all might hear our kids in the back. I'm looking all around. That's our kids, y'all. But we trying to get this done. If we prepare in our now, we will be equipped in our future for whatever may come our way.
That's right.
And we'll be able to do the hard things together.
Yeah.
So
that's absolutely right. So here's what we're gonna do, y'all. The first thing is we're gonna identify whether your rhythm matches the season you're in. That's the first thing. Let's sit down, let's talk. Okay, does our current rhythm match the season that we're in? Do we need to make some tweaks? And chances are, if you're anything like us, there's some tweaks that need to be made when that season changes.
Can we switch up the tempo?
That's what we're gonna call this one. Switch up the tempo. That's it.
That's what Chris Brown said.
Okay. Go ahead. You want to talk about number 2?
Yeah, and number 2, sorry y'all, have a meeting this week and talk through and create the rhythms needed to put one another first. We are all about serving our spouse. So what does that look like? Don't just say it with your mouth, but actually put it on paper, and create it so that you can actually walk it out and live it out daily.
And be intentional about it, man. Listen, we are living witnesses the way that we forged through this season that we struggled in. And hear me, struggled in.
And struggles.
And struggle continually.
Now,
man,
sometimes.
It's one of those things where we just said, okay, let's take a step back, create some things, get intentional so that the season doesn't just throw us away, put us in the blender, and we don't know what's going on. So be intentional. All right, well, that's been another episode of More to Marriage in our video series. And remember this, getting more out of your marriage starts
with giving more in your marriage. Dallas. And Denver.
That's right, we got our kids in here. Give more so that you could get more. All right, we love y'all. We'll talk soon. Peace.
See ya.